Welcome aboard the Strange Express. My name is Dr. Scherzo Stantio. Today we present part 2 of Memorial. If you've not seen part 1, you'll find a link in this video and another one below the video. If you haven't left for part 1, please make yourself comfortable, as the engineer has just signaled that we're about to be on our way. I was taken back to my room. It was after 1 p.m. local time, and I was starving, but I was also exhausted. So, I went to bed and fell asleep. The next thing I knew was someone was knocking at my door. I looked at my watch and I'd been asleep for almost 3 hours. I went to the door and answered. It was my driver. He told me they had been sent to pick me up and take me for another interview. Since I'd been sleeping in my clothes, I convinced the driver to wait while I washed my face and changed into some other clothes. This news of another interview caught me completely off guard. I hoped they weren't going to ask me some more crazy questions. I was probably grumpy due to sleep and food deprivation, but I thought if they asked me any more of those crazy questions, I'd give them some crazy answers. We arrived back at the office where the previous interview had taken place, and a tall, slender man met me in the lobby, escorted me to a different room from the one that I'd been in before. This room was an office, a very bland office. No personal belongings, no family photos, nothing that would give me a clue to the occupant. The man asked me to take a seat, and he sat down behind the desk. The room was too quiet. I broke the silence. I was surprised when I was told that I was wanted for another interview. The man looked up from a note that he was reading and replied, "There's no additional interview." "Okay," I responded. I didn't think I did so well with that interview. Without looking up from the note he was reading, he answered, "Actually, you did just fine with it. You have the position. I just need you to complete some paperwork." Within moments of him saying this, another man came into the office with what appeared to be a ream of papers. "Mr. Sterling, are these the documents you wanted?" The man seated at the desk rifled through the documents. I heard him mumble something about a document number, and then he said, "That's it. Found it." "Yes, Mr. Blythe, this is just what I needed." "Thank you," at which Mr. Blythe exited the room. Mr. Sterling then gave the stack of papers to me and told me to go ahead and complete the paperwork and to make sure that I signed it in all required places. Honestly, I signed less paperwork when I bought my house. After about an hour and a half, I completed the paperwork and was able to return to my room, where I immediately called out and ordered pizza. I took a flight back home, and when I arrived, Mark had already left a message on my answer machine asking me to call him as soon as I could. I called him and he told me he would be coming over to see me that afternoon. I told him that I was absolutely exhausted and he agreed to wait until the next day. When he came over the next day, I asked him again to come in, but he again asked me to take a ride in his car. We repeated a routine from the previous week. I had questions I wanted to ask Mark, but he spoke first. Jeff, I want to meet with you because I need to bring you up to speed as quick as possible. First of all, we've made contact with an alien species. Mark paused after his statement. I presumed to see how I would respond, so I asked him, are they the significant find that you said your agency had discovered? Yes, Mark answered. One of our field agents was following up on a reported UFO sighting in a small Pennsylvania town back in early January when he became witness to a second visitation. He described it as a silver-gray disc-shaped vessel with red and blue lights around its perimeter. Now that's original, I interjected. Original or not, Mark replied. That's what he reported. During the early morning hours, he saw it land in a park west of the town and followed it along with about half a dozen of the locals. He was closest to the saucer, but he had to think of some way to get the others to leave. I stopped Mark at this point. 2 questions. What is the purpose of having the others leave? And if it's so important to do so, why didn't he just flash a badge and tell them to leave as he is conducting official business? I asked. Well, Mark said, I'll give you the reason that we're given for not allowing citizens to be exposed to alleged extraterrestrials. You may not buy it. There is concern that if the general population is allowed to make contact with extraterrestrials, it may cause an uncontrollable worldwide panic. Supposition being that the aliens may announce that the foundations on which our society are built are totally false. They may say things that we hold near and dear are lies created by those in control to place false barriers on how we think, act, and behave. I've said it, I don't buy it, but that's the official version. My theory is that a corrupt group of people see it as an opportunity to capitalize on the way to get more power, and they just want to make sure that no one else has a chance to get a piece of the pie. With regard to our agent flashing an ID and ordering the people to leave, there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, we carry no official identification, much less a badge. Remember, our agency does not officially exist. But even if he did have a badge, do you think they would say, okay, and leave? As it turned out, he didn't need to do anything. As soon as the hatch on the saucer began to open, most of them took off running, leaving just our agent and 2 other people. He looked back at the ones who didn't run away and noticed they were standing stock still, almost as if frozen. He then saw 2 occupants of the saucer coming down the ramp of the saucer. There was a woman and a man. I had to stop Mark and ask, when you say a woman and a man, did they look like humans? Our agent Kevin told me that the aliens he met could have easily blended in with humans. The only noticeable differences were that they had a reddish-purple complexion and, don't laugh, slightly pointed ears. He also said that they were wearing some kind of black uniform. They couldn't see anything that indicated rank. He said their uniforms were identical, including what appeared to be a jewel pendant or brooch that they both wore on their left shoulder. As they approached him, he could hear them talking to each other, but it was all gibberish to him, and he wondered how he's going to be able to communicate. His question was answered when the female spoke to him in English. He said that her English was close to perfect. Interestingly, he also said that when she spoke, she almost sounded as though she were singing. She told him not to be afraid, they meant him no harm, and that the other people would be released once they had departed. She then asked if he would board their ship. Kevin said that he was a bit hesitant about doing so, but then it occurred to him that they could have just as easily froze him too and just carried him on board, so he accepted their invitation. Once on board, he believes that the ship lifted off. He said he was standing the entire time and felt no feeling of movement or acceleration, but he was able to see part of the ship control panel. But he noticed that when he first boarded that it was inactive, but shortly it was all lit up with flashing lights and gauges. What he found really strange was they appeared to be going at the controls. At least, he didn't see anyone from where he was. Did he learn anything about them, I asked? Very little. She seemed disinclined to answer any questions. She was more concerned with asking him questions, and if he could arrange a meeting with some of Earth's leadership. Kevin told her he believed he could arrange a meeting. She told him that they would return on February 28th to meet with us, and she gave him a beacon for us to signal the location. One thing he did learn was that she was the only one on the ship able to speak any Earth languages. It seems she was especially gifted. She was able to master any language within minutes. Wow, that is impressive, I said. Mark grinned. Would you like to meet her? Yeah, but... Mark interrupted. Good. I was able to get your name added to the list of attendees. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. Here's a list of all who will be in attendance. Take a look at the list. If you have any questions on the other attendees, let me know. Oh, and hang on tight to that letter. I'm not supposed to have a copy. February 28th? You said Kevin met with them in early January. So why did you wait 2 months for the meeting? I asked. Mark answered, we didn't pick the date, she did. She simply indicated that that's when they would be back. I opened the envelope that he handed me and read through the names. I saw a name that I recognized. Hank Doors? I asked. I knew that would get your attention, Mark answered. He's one of the ones I was talking about when I said there were people who were given access to our information, or not even on the government payroll. I suspect I answered that's because someone in the government is on his payroll. You know, I thought that the FTC would nail him for sure for his company's anti-competitive business practices. You're preaching to the choir, brother, Mark replied, but some people just seem to be able to get away with anything. I take it you don't have any questions on him. Is there anyone else on the list you have questions about? I noticed that your name is on the list. You seem to be doing a lot more than writing their software. Mark smirked. It seems that when I was able to complete their software in about 6 months, the powers that be had me tested and discovered some of my other abilities, such as being able to commit copious amounts of information to memory after having only viewed it briefly, my ability to learn new subjects quickly, my creative problem-solving ability, and don't forget your modesty. Modesty, Mark said. Never heard of the word. Now, back to the list. Is there anyone on the list that you don't know and would like to have more information about? Who is Dr. Alicia Thomas, I asked. Alicia, Mark started. Dr. Thomas is an exobiologist and an extraterrestrial researcher. She's one very smart lady, and she has some very interesting ideas on what extraterrestrial life may be like. In fact, we've been working together on a program to assist those in the field to know what to look for in authentic encounters and the right questions to ask. Whoa, I interrupted. Am I sensing something more than a professional relationship with Alicia? Dr. Thomas? Is she the reason for your new suave look? Mark responded with an indignant, no. I just admire her for her ability to see things from fresh perspectives. She is smart, and she is fun to be around. She's a good conversationalist, but she doesn't talk too much. And while I like her and respect, I interrupted Mark again and said, I get the picture. No additional explanation is needed. With her being such a great conversationalist, along with her other apparent qualities, why do you need me to be your confidant? Jeff, it's different with her. It's not her fault, but when I talk to her, I feel like I'm walking on eggs. I'm afraid that I'm going to say something that'll be stupid or that she'll find disagreeable. For example, she thinks that Hank Doors is a pretty good guy. Wait a second, I interrupted. I thought you said that she was smart. Mark turned and gave me his intimidation look. She is smart, but she's a nice person too, and she always looks for the best qualities in people. Well, I replied, apparently Superwoman's character judgment vision is on the fritz. At this, I received a second look of intimidation in less than 1 minute. Anyway, I continued, I'm sure you'll be fine as long as you don't give her that look. You'd probably scare her witless, and then you couldn't have any conversation with her. There were 3 other names on the list. One was a supervisor, and the other 2 were specialists, a medical doctor and a tactical specialist. Mark told me that I would be there simply as an observer. Interestingly, he told me that Hank Doors was there as an observer also. Mark told me that I should refrain from speaking as he and the others would be working loosely from a script that he and Dr. Thomas had developed, as there was certain information that they deemed crucial to obtain. I asked him when the day would be, and he told me it would be a week from Friday, and they'd pick me up on Wednesday and fly to Pennsylvania together. Mark and I continued to talk about my new job and my probable duties. He told me that we would need to keep a low profile for a while with regards to the corruption, to avoid garnering any suspicion. And he said that some good things were happening as a result of their work. We did some more talking, and he took me back to my house. When we got there, he announced, oh, if you look in the back seat floorboard, you'll see a stack of training manuals. They're for you. Enjoy them in good health. I started to give him a few choice words, but he cut me off and held up his hand as he said, no, I know what you're going to say, but there's no need to think. I spent the week tying up loose ends. I told those who asked that I'd been offered a job that was much more aligned with my degree. I really couldn't talk much about it, as I would be working on a project that the company did not want to reveal yet. On a flight to Pennsylvania, I asked Mark if it wasn't dangerous meeting in the same location. He told me that it wasn't going to be in the same location, but northwest of the original location, as they had a safe location to meet close to the Ohio border, near Newcastle. We had taken a small chartered plane, and as we were nearing our destination, we heard the intercom click on, and the pilot announced that we'd be landing soon, but he wanted to warn us that we might pass through some turbulence on the way down, but he didn't think it would be too bad. He said that the current temperature was about 36 degrees, but would probably drop to around 10 degrees that night, with a strong chance of snowstorms. In a few minutes we landed without even a bump. Mark went and got the car while I stayed and sat with the luggage, such as it was. I seriously thought about going outside, as it was hot inside the terminal. It had been a bit chilly in the plane, but whoever was in control of the thermostat in that airport was overcompensating. After a few minutes, Mark came back and drove us to the quarters where we would be staying. I'd settled in the room that I'd been assigned and sat down and was reading a copy of the Bite I brought with me when there was a knock at the door. Not expecting anybody, I figured it must be Mark. Instead, when I opened the door, it was filled with a very tall, thin man with a gaunt face, slightly balding. I guess he is in his 40s. He introduced himself as Terrence Morrow. I recognized the name from the letter that Mark had shown me, but I didn't acknowledge this in any way, as Mark wasn't supposed to have the letter. He advised me that he is Mark's direct supervisor and he would be mine also. I invited him in, and he started off by saying that the reason for his visit was twofold. First, he wanted to let me know that there was going to be a meeting the next day and I was going to be required to attend. And second, he wanted to meet the famous Jeffrey Barnes. I told him to just call me Jeff, as the only one who called me Jeffrey was my mother, and when she did it, it usually meant that I was in trouble. Very well, he replied. Jeff it is. I understand you and Mark have been friends for a long time. He speaks very highly of you. I confirmed that we've been friends for a long time, relatively speaking. Morrow then sat down in a chair that I had been sitting in and clasped his hands together and said, I really wasn't looking to bring anyone else on board at this time, but Mark wanted me to do so. He paused at this point as if waiting for me to respond, but I didn't know what to say. After a moment, he continued, Mark has made himself very valuable to us. At this point, it would be very inconvenient, nigh impossible, to replace him. I don't think Mark realizes his own potential. From the information I've been able to gather about you, on the other hand, you are, shall I say, resourceful, but mischievous. If you bring an outside of Mark that we don't encourage. Despite this, I have committed to make you a part of our team, something I don't do lightly, since due to the nature of our work, it's generally a lifetime of service. What I ask of you is that you use your influence on Mark for the good of the organization. I'd like to have your word that you will do just that. I answered, you've put me on the spot, and honestly, I'm not ready to make such a promise at this time. I don't know enough about this organization to write a blank check like the one you're requesting. Let me get to know you and the organization and ask me again in 3 or 4 months. To my knowledge, I've never asked or encouraged Mark to do anything illegal or immoral, and I promise you that I'm not going to start in hell. The tall man got up from the chair, hands still clasped, and said, well, that wasn't the answer that I'd hoped for. I understand your reason, and for now I accept it. Welcome aboard, Jeff. I'll see you at the meeting tomorrow morning. I reached out to shake hands, but the man just turned and walked straight to the door. As he was exiting, he turned back and said, 9 a.m. sharp, and he shut the door behind him. I went back to reading my magazine and fell asleep in the chair. I finally made it to bed around 3 in the morning when I woke up in the chair with a kink in my neck. At 7 a.m. I was wakened by my alarm, so I got up and took a shower. When I came out, Mark was seated in the chair. I had not seen him sitting there, and when he announced himself by saying, nice robe, I nearly had a heart attack. How did you get in? Easy, he replied. I just came through the door. I knocked, but since you didn't come to the door, I tried the handle, and the door was open, so I came in. I then realized what had happened. The boss paid me a visit last night, and when he left, I forgot to lock the door behind him. So, you met the boss. What did you think of him? Mark asked. I don't think he likes me. After a little chat, I went to shake his hand, and he just turned and walked away. Mark laughed at this. No, it wasn't you. He doesn't shake hands with anyone. He's a germaphobe. He can't be much of a germaphobe. He sat in that chair, I said, pointing at the sticky faux leather chair that Mark was currently occupying. Point taken, Mark replied, but he doesn't shake hands with me, and he always carries those little packets that contain a single lemon-scented wet wipe he's constantly using. This office smells like he's running a lemonade concession. So, did he give you the old welcome to the team pep talk? Not really, I answered. He wanted me to promise that I wouldn't be a bad influence on you. Really, Mark answered. How did you respond? I told him I'd think about it. Good answers, Mark said. I really just came over to see if you wanted to go grab some breakfast before the meeting. But now I feel like I should go get a shower after sitting in his chair. Maybe you should, I answered. I thought I got a whiff of something unpleasant when you came in. But be sure you lock your door. Any type of lowlife can sneak in around here if you don't. Mark replied, I was going to buy your breakfast. I answered, hey, I remember when you did that once before. Boy, was I embarrassed when you opened your wallet and all the moths flew out. Mark grinned. You're in the mood this morning. Get dressed so we can go get breakfast. I'll still buy, even though you insulted my collection of rare Peruvian butterflies that I keep in my wallet by calling them moths.